Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Ilustrado podcast. In today's episode, we'll be discussing additional commentaries from the recently uploaded video titled Baybayin, a Filipino script, which is now available on my main YouTube channel. Link is now in the description below for those who haven't watched it yet. The format for this episode will be different from the previous one. As promised, I'll be making a script for future episodes of this podcast. Whereas unlike the last one, the episode structure was all over the place, and hopefully this one will be more structured and formalized for a better podcast experience moving forward. But before we begin into today's topic, I would like to add more commentaries on my previous video about the salakot. I forgot to mention about the elephant in the room, which is the lack of any background music. Originally, the video was supposed to have it, but I decided the last minute to remove it altogether to avoid any copyright issues. Moving forward that day, I decided to be more thorough and pragmatic with music usage by either composing it myself, which will take quite a while for me to practice. Side note, I'm currently doing it now via FL Studio Mobile, or find myself some royalty-free music. With regards to the latter, it's really a copyright landmine because there are some that were royalty-free at first, but then eventually someone will either claim it as theirs or remove its royalty-free status. Famous example of this that I could think of at the moment was Alan Walker's Faded, where it was originally a music track titled Fade for NCS, or no copyright sound for those who don't know. As for the background music provided by YouTube, I've tried my best in finding some music that would match into the video, but unfortunately, most won't really fit. So that left me no choice but to subscribe to websites that offer licensed royalty-free music in the meantime. And that answers the lack of background music in that video. I mentioned in the video as well that the French took inspiration from the Spanish when the latter adopted the salakot for their military and police forces. There was a comment made by one of the members of the subreddit r/Filipino history that the Spanish sent a force to aid the French during the siege of Turan in 1858. And one of those forces sent were 450 Filipinos consisting of Tagals and Bisayans, which were named by the French as chasseurs Tagal en français or Tagalog hunters in English. Even though I couldn't find any mention of this by Peter Suchu or anywhere on the website militarysunhelmets.com, it's quite possible that the French saw the use of this hat during the siege. It may also be possible that they took inspiration from Vietnamese conical hats worn by local populace in the area. Commenter also mentions that there were regional variations of the salakot within the Tagalog region as well. Unfortunately, during my research, I couldn't find any documented works about this, and to quote what Professor Ambeth Ocampo has personally told me back then, the best resource is what's available to you, so I overlooked it on my part. And the commenter mentions that there were several types in the region, such as the Pinawikan, Humhum, Sawing, and Takokoy, where the latter two are worn by women. And even those have variations as well, depending if they were elongated or initlog, or widened or malapad. Commenter learned it from a salakot maker in Laguna, which is, for our international listeners, located in southern Luzon. So once again, thank you so much to the folks at r/Filipino history for that wonderful insight. And with that out of the way, let us begin with our podcast episode about Baybayin, a Filipino script. For the language map portion, I've tried to the best of my abilities to simplify it, but no matter how many times I do and redo it, there will always be some errors as I cannot fit all of the data in the video. Initially, I was supposed to use the language map made by the Komisyon sa Wikang Filipino or KWF, but personally, the map isn't that aesthetically pleasing to look at, let alone being put on a video, so I've again tried my best on simplifying it. For those who are interested, the map is available in the description below. Also, in the Baybayin to alphabet portion of the video, I was supposed to use the IPA, or the International Phonetic Alphabet, but decided to use the normal alphabet instead since there aren't a lot of people who could understand it. Now, the sources that I've used drew heavily from three works. The first one being the book Three Baybayin Studies by scholars Ramon Bomen Guillermo, Mifel Joseph Di Paluga, Maricor Soriano, and Vernon Artotantes, published by the University of the Philippines Press. The second one is from the French book Baybayin, L'Alphabet Syllabique de Tagal, or Baybayin, the Syllabic Alphabet of Tagalogs, by French Filipinologist Jean-Paul Potet. And last but not least, the works of Baybayin and Tagalog enthusiast Paul Morrow from Canada. As for the other sources that I've used for this video, I'll put them in the description below. The name Alibata, when referring to Baybayin, was coined by Professor Paul R. Versosa in 1914 when he mistakenly theorized that the script originally came from Arabic. To quote the professor, "In 1921, I returned from the United States to give public lectures on Tagalog philology, calligraphy, and linguistics. I introduced the word Alibata, which found its way into newsprints and is often mentioned by many authors in their writings. I coined this word in 1914 in the New York Public Library Manuscript Research Division, basing it on the Maguindanao or Moro arrangement of letters of the alphabet after the Arabic alif ba ta, alibata, F being eliminated for euphony's sake." According to national artist and former chairman of the KWF, Virgilio S. Almario, Rio Alma, in his piece at Culo at Colorum, I have to repeat that Alibata is a colorum term because there is no such alphabet in the Philippines and even the whole world. With regards to the name Baybayin itself, to tell you the truth, no such term exists in any historical text nor any mention of it by Spanish chroniclers. In the Doctrina Cristiana, they call the script as El ABC in Lengua Tagala, or the ABC in Tagalog language, and most scholars back then call it Tagalog characters. For the names of the numerous versions of Baybayin, it should have been just the Doctrina 1593 and Lopez 1620 versions. But since there were a lot of versions floating around within the Filipino internet, such as those mentioned in the video, I decided to include them instead, as they might be the more familiar names used by ordinary Filipinos, despite not being technically accurate to say the least. I did not include the terms Badlit and Luntarsug in the video, despite the names being used within Baybayin enthusiast circles. For Badlit, to quote Professor Rolando Borrinaga, Badlit was introduced by Jovito Avellana to describe the alleged ancient script that he said was used to write the Aginid verse that he has allegedly transcribed, which tells an alleged oral history of known Cebuano personalities around the time of the Magellan expedition. This script was apparently a creation of Jose Marco, the famous hoax artist, which Avellana used to render in Badlit something highly fictional that he had composed. Also, Professor Borrinaga claims during the Facebook webinar at the Casa Gorordo Museum that Baybayin came from Visayas, but I have yet to confirm this as it requires further study on my end. Fortunately, I don't have a copy of his book, Surat Binisaya, where I think he explains it more in detail. I can only get some snippets from the internet, as there were no more stocks of the book from New Day publishers. And for Luntarsug, I managed to talk with Sir Nel Di Holo, or Ka-Nels as some people call him, all thanks to my friends at the UP Bangsamoro Studies Group, so a huge shout out to them. Ka-Nels mentioned that Luntarsug is a reconstruction based on current research findings. To quote what Ka-Nels told me, "This idea emerged from analyzing writings about Baybayin's origins, identified as Moro writing learned by the Tagalogs from Muslims of Borneo. Two scholars and historians such as Samuel K. Tan and Najib Salibi referred to the term Luntar, and I personally believe that this resembles Baybayin. Additionally, Catherine Mayo noted in her book Isles of Fear that aristocrats in Sulu used Hindu syllabaries for writing. This syllabary I personally see as the Luntar per resemblance. The term Luntar originates from a plant of the same name, whose leaf is wide, used by genealogists to write genealogies back then in the absence of paper. Therefore, Luntar can refer to both the written literature and the writing system and characters. Our ideas were based on parallels to the Bugis script, Lontara or Lontar, and the Sumatra Lontara script, recognizing the geographical and cultural connections between Sulawesi and the Sulu archipelago, as mentioned in the epic La Galigo, which was also written on Lontar and used characters they also call Lontar. The aim of our reconstructions is to bring attention to Luntar Sug for further research and to uncover more references. This is especially important as many local documents were destroyed by the Spanish in Jolo in 1876 and during a series of attacks before their departure in 1899. At present, finding references and sources remains an ongoing effort, and we encourage everyone to be part of this search. As to Najib Salibi, you can find it in his book, Moro and Laws. He mentioned that the Sultan gave him the Luntar instead of a Sharia book. Once again, I would like to give a huge shout out to Canelds and the UP Bangsamoro Studies group for this, as it really helped me on my research about the Luntar Sug. As for the quote, it was contrary to the intrinsic character and nature which God had given it. It came from Pedro Andres de Castro y Amuedo in his book Ortografía Regal de la Lengua Tagalog, published in 1776, which was translated in Tagalog or Filipino by Elvin Ebreo and now part of the KWF's Aklat ng Bayan series. Baybayin is written in scripto continua, meaning there are no spaces between words. This trait is common in other Southeast Asian Indic-style writing systems such as the Javanese script in Java, Indonesia. But Baybayin was unlikely used for written literature as suggested by literary scholar Bienvenido Lumbera. Historian Vicente Rafael pointed out that the Tagalog script's ambiguity made it impractical for preserving historical and literary texts, reinforcing the notion that the script was seen as inadequate for serious documentation. To quote from his 1988 book, Contracting Colonialism, Translation and Christian Conversion in Tagalog Society under Early Spanish Rule, published by Ateneo de Manila University Press, the inevitability of faltering as one reads the Tagalog script obstructed the passage of determinate thought that was believed to be contained within the hierarchy of voice or writing. The ambivalence inherent in the Tagalog script tended to defer sense in favor of the sensation of sound as one slid from one signifier to another. This tendency is further suggested by the very word for the script. Baybayin means to learn the alphabet and spell a word, but it also refers to the seacoast, baybayin, or the act of coasting along a river, baybayin. This sense of the word highlights the seeming randomness involved in the reading of the script as one floats, as were over a stream of sounds elicited by the characters. Perhaps this was why the natives, as Spanish writers and present-day historians have observed, showed little interest in employing this local syllabary for the serious preservation of historical and literary texts. Thus, Raphael seals the fate of Baybayin as an impractical and useless writing system. But this is contested by the accounts written by Father Francisco Ignacio Alcina and Father Pedro Cirino, in which they described how Baybayin characters were pronounced and used, noting that proficient readers could read it smoothly, despite its complexity. To quote Father Alcina in his book, History of the Bisayan People in the Philippine Islands, which I have a copy of all 3 volumes, published by the UST or University of Santo Tomas Press, translated from Spanish. Even though it is easy to learn their way of writing, it is very difficult to read it because most of it, that is the characters which are not expressed, must be quickly supplied by the reader. Thus, for greater clarity, they are accustomed to place after each word these 2 lines, in which serve to distinguish the words and thus make the reading easier. And if all were to be continuous and without these separations, although some write without them, they would still be more confusing. There's also the existence of Mangyan poetry called Ambahan, written in what is considered an imperfect script. And to continue what Jean-Paul Potet said in the video, This means that despite its deficiencies, a Baybayin text is in general comprehensible for someone with the habit of reading it. Versification and the use of formulas facilitate reading. Now, let's proceed with the Doctrina Christiana. The complete title of this book is quite lengthy, as is tradition with books during the 16th century. I'll try to pronounce the book's lengthy title for the sake of this podcast. First, in Spanish. Doctrina Cristiana, en lengua española y tagala, corregida por los religiosos de la Orden impresa con licencia en San Gabriel de la Orden de Santo Domingo, en Manila, 1593. Then in Tagalog. Doctrina Cristiana, sa wikang Kastila, Tagalog, itinama ng mga reliyoso ng mga orden, inilimbag na may lisensya sa San Gabriel ng Orden ni Santo Domingo, sa Maynila, taong 1593. Then translated in English for our non-Spanish and non-Filipino listeners. Christian Doctrine in Spanish and Tagalog, corrected by the religious of the orders, printed with a license in San Gabriel of the Order of St. Dominic, or the Dominicans, in Manila, 1593. It has the longest, most elaborate, and authentic Baybayin text out of all the ones that are currently available as a historical document with other sources such as the Calatagan pot inscription and the Monreal or Ticao stones that are still subject for authenticity and require further study as mentioned in the video. The Doctrina is one of the last and most far-reaching examples of how this Indianized writing system spread to Southeast Asia and was later influenced by the Latin alphabet introduced by the Spaniards. The Doctrina consists of 12 discrete texts, which are, for non-Catholics out there, the Pater Noster, or Our Father, the Ave Maria, Hail Mary, the Credo, or the Creed, the Salve Regina, Hail Holy Queen, the Articles of Faith, the Deuteronomy, the Commandments of the Church, the Seven Sacraments, the seven capital sins, the 14 duties of the Christian, the Confessionaire, and the Questionnaire. Linguist Andrew Gonzalez analyzed the lexicon of the Doctrina, categorizing it into the borrowed Sanskrit words, native Austronesian terms, calques, and direct Spanish borrowings. But Gonzalez ignored the Baybayin text in the Doctrina and focused analysis on the Latinized Tagalog text. He noted that spoken Tagalog has remained largely unchanged since the late 16th century. The writer of the Baybayin text sometimes choose to render certain phrases closer to the Spanish original, which may conclude that the writer might be Spanish. Some words in the Doctrina contain concepts that are either no exact Tagalog equivalent or no meaning at all. Spellings in the Doctrina also reflect dialectal variations in pronunciation. According to paleographer Juan R. Francisco in his article written in 1973 issue of Philippine Journal of Linguistics, anthropologist Robert B. Fox suggested that the Philippine syllabaries, which did not record final consonants, might have been influenced by the Buginese of southern Celebes in Indonesia. Francisco, however, argued against this, citing a lack of tangible evidence for direct contact between these regions. He proposed an alternative theory which suggests that the carriers of the writing system to the Philippines were likely Indianized Malays, Javanese, or Sumatrans, who themselves were not well versed in writing. Hence, the absence of the symbols of the final consonants may be due to this situation and to the cultural situation of the recipients of the writing system. Historian William Henry Scott suggested that Tagalog merchants might have brought the writing technology from their trading voyages. As mentioned in the video, there are still outliers in the Philippines which still use Baybayin. Father Gaspar de San Agustin still found the Baybayin useful in 1703. In his Compendio de la Lengua Tagala, he wrote that it helps to know the Tagalog characters in distinguishing accents. And he mentioned that the Baybayin was still being used to write poetry in Batangas at the time. Tomás Ortiz felt it was still necessary to describe the Tagalog characters in his Arte y Reglas de la Lengua Tagala of 1729. And as mentioned in the video, a pact between Christians and Mangyans on the island Mindoro was signed with Baybayin letters in 1792, which is not surprising because the Mangyans never stopped using their script. As for what Dr. H. Otley Beyer claimed in the video, he quotes in his 1921 book, The Philippines Before Magellan, that one Spanish priest in southern Luzon boasted of having destroyed more than 300 scrolls written in the native character. Again, as mentioned in the video, historians have been searching for the source of Beyer's claim, but until now, none have ever learned the name of that zealous priest. Furthermore, there has never been a recorded instance of ancient Filipinos writing on scrolls. Although many Spaniards didn't hide their disdain for Filipino culture, the only documents they burned were probably the occasional curse or incantations that offended their beliefs. There simply were no dangerous documents to burn because the pre-Hispanic Filipinos did not write at length about such things as their own beliefs, mythology, or history, as those are mostly passed down orally. But with regards to writing, it can be argued that the Spanish friars actually helped to preserve Baybayin by continuing to use it and write about it even after it fell out of use amongst most Filipinos. It is more likely that mere practicality was the main reason that Baybayin went out of style, as it could not bear the burdens of the new sounds of Spanish and that culture's demand for an accurate written representation of their spoken language. Father Chirino made an observation in 1604 that shows how easily Filipinos adopted the new alphabet, albeit with his usual touch of exaggeration. To complete the quote in the video, "They have learned our language and pronunciation and write it as well as we do, and even better, because they are so clever that they learned everything very quickly. In Tigbawan, Panay, I had a small boy in school who in 3 months, by copying letters that I received in good script, learned to write much better than I, and translated important papers for me most accurately, without errors or falsehoods." As for its resurgence, one of the things that I would like to add from the video is that Baybayin was revived during the Second World War by several female couriers of the Hukbalahap, but it was discontinued in 1943 when the script was used by the pro-Japanese Kalibapi to promote Japanese-sponsored Asian nationalism against the West. It then reappeared again after the resurgence of militant activist organizations in the 1960s. It was used by the Filipino youth organization Kabataang Makabayan, as mentioned in the video, where it stated in Article 1, Section 2 of their constitution that they shall use the Katipunan flag. Since then, the script has been used by various activist organizations that politically lean on the left spectrum. Some interesting facts about the Baybayin, the Philippine peso bills: the font was made by Paul Morrow himself, and all the Baybayin fonts that I use for this video are all thanks to him. So Paul, if you're listening to this right now, and I know you can understand Tagalog, maraming salamat po sa inyong malaking iniambag sa pananaliksik o research ng Sulat Baybayin. For the legacy portion of the video, GMA News Network journalist Howie Severino wrote articles on his use of the script, titled "Why Baybayin?" To quote these articles, "When writing in my journal on a plane ride recently, I did not want the passenger next to me to read what I was writing, so I wrote in Baybayin. It's become like a secret personal code. It's a fresh take on heritage conservation, or in this case, heritage revival. But our native writing systems are much older than any existing ancestral house. Simply put, native scripts were used by our ancestors, replaced by the colonizers' writing system, and then forgotten. But today, it's an accessible ancient medium for us modern folks to convey feelings and ideas." I'll put the link in the description for those interested in reading them. If you want to learn more about standardized typography in Baybayin, I'll put the links in the description below. The article is written by Norman de los Santos, titled "Saving Endangered Philippine Native Scripts in the Modern Digital World to Typography, Technology, and Standardization," which was presented at the 2014 International Workshop on Endangered Scripts of Island Southeast Asia in Tokyo University of Foreign Studies, and the Philippine Indigenous Writing Systems in the Modern World, presented at the 2015 13th International Conference on Austronesian Linguistics at the Academica Sinica in Taipei, Taiwan. For the House Bill 6069, as mentioned in the video, It mandates the Department of Education, or DepEd, and the Commission on Higher Education, or CHED, to insert the writing systems in relevant subjects in their curriculum program as electives or specialized courses. There's also Senate Bill 1866, or the National Writing System Act, written by Senator Lauren Legarda, and its legislative status is, quote, pending in the committee as of February 13, 2023. The reason as to why I didn't include it in the video is because no progress has been made since the bill's introduction way back in 2014, exactly 10 years ago. Despite the rising interest by younger generations, there are still some deficiencies in the current spread of Baybayin, such as numerous reports of misspellings. One example I could think of are inscribed tattoos, where they either don't cancel the vowels of their consonants or outright misspellings in the first place. There's a compilation of these errors collected by artist Christian Kabuay, who was also featured in my video, which you can check in the description below. And that's all the time we have for this episode. For more information, please check the description for the sources that I've used. Once again, this is the Ilustrado Podcast, signing off.